Good afternoon, everyone. It's Kirsten here for a Thursday spa business break where we're talking about spa business, despite the whole industry literally being completely shut down all over North America. So today I want to talk about starting to prepare kind of your first steps for getting back to work. Now, it may seem premature because there's a lot we still don't know, both in Canada and the US. I'm in Canada, but I'm watching, of course, what's happening in the US for in terms of what's happening for spas and spa businesses, as far as kind of money, initiatives from your governments. But regardless, it's still fairly, here in BC, in Canada, we've had a very strong, we've had really strong leadership, and we definitely are seeing the curve flattening. But yet we don't have any dates as far as when personal services can get back to work. So we're, the past few weeks, the past month, there's been lots of different topics, lots of different discussion about, just the shock of what's happened, the shock of the implications, what that means to you in terms of your business, in terms of your personal finances. And then the last couple of weeks, I've been encouraging spa owners to take care of themselves, acknowledge that this is an incredibly stressful time, especially for those of you that have little kids at home. Wow. Like I only have one left. He's 18. The other two are out of the house. And we constantly, we do talk about the fact if we had to have all five of us, we don't have a really huge house, but all five of us had to be home during this time, it would be a lot more difficult. And especially if we're little, especially if you're needing to homeschool. So, I totally recognize that many of you have so many balls up in the air on top of just the stress of the unknown and what's happening. But I feel like it does help when we can get a little bit of clear direction. And although it's not clear exactly when we'll be able to get back to work, it is clear about, we're already hearing about some things that in other countries that they're experiencing. So I have a previous client who is in Norway, and they got word last week that they can open up April 27th. So they're preparing their back to work right now. So I figured we're also seeing a couple of articles being written specifically for the spa industry or the personal service industry. There's two articles. I published one. It's not my article, but I shared one. And then somebody else, I think it was Liz, shared one in Spa Business Mastery as well. So I kind of wanted to bring a couple of different points that I've been listening to and kind of bring them into one spot for you. So even though we don't have any dates confirmed, sometimes some of you guys in different states are hearing that, it's going to be mid-May, beginning of May, but it still could be pushed, right? So we still don't know. So there are three categories that I want you to consider when you are starting to think about what is it going to look like when we get back to work. And that has to do with team and client safety, client care, and then cash flow. So those are my three headings today that I want to bring up. Now, I'm all about systems. And so this topic today is about what kind of new systems are you going to have to create? Now, you're not going to have to start from scratch because most of you have already been in business and already have some of your systems in place. So you have your sanitation system already, one would hope. Now, when we're getting back to work and preparing to get back to work, you are absolutely going to have to rethink what your sanitation and kind of client safety, team safety systems are going to be. So, is that going to look like needing to wear full face shields? Definitely wearing gloves, definitely wearing masks. What about the paper gowns? What about as far as other cleaning systems, how are you going to change how you're cleaning your laundry? As far as how you're washing it, it's hot water, in bleach. So there's those protocols there. Thinking about the extra disposables that you're going to need. Maybe you're going to do away with, if you're a waxing studio, I see you here, Kathy, and you're going to do away with sheets for your beds, and you're just going to go to a paper bed sheet. Also, you're going to be thinking about new systems, about what your cleaning system is between clients. What is your cleaning system for kind of once a week deep clean? Does it need to be twice a week? Those are the questions, and that we don't have answers to quite yet. But I think that as an industry, we're all a bunch of germaphobes. And so we would rather err on the side of caution anyways. I feel like most of the industry is very responsible that way. The other piece about client and team care is, are you going to be implementing client screenings? So for the restaurant industry, they're already talking about definitely taking tables out of the restaurant so that they can maintain more social distancing or physical distancing. They're also talking about using thermometer guns to check people's temperature as they come in. What else? And then just having pre-screening forms, as far as every time a client appointment, having these pre-screening forms, so that they're disclosing whether they have been sick or a family member's been sick, all that kind of stuff. So those are the kind of protocols for client and team care safety that you're going to want to revisit and create some new protocols for. On top of that, if you have a team, once you've created new sanitation, disinfection, kind of team client safety protocols, you're going to need to train your team if you have a team. So that likely looks like getting on FaceTime or Zoom or Skype or some sort of online video conferencing to do your training. All right. So I know there's lots of spas already that are using Zoom for team trainings. Like they're having team meetings, they're having one-on-ones, they're having meetings with their managers. Like we can do so much with video conferencing. We don't have to wait until we're allowed to get back in the spa to start with our team training. But as far as client and team safety, you are going to need to make sure you have some sort of team training to make sure everybody knows what's going on and so that they're following those protocols. All right, let's talk about client care. Once you're back to work, clients can now book. There's likely going to be needing to be some sort of policy to stagger appointments. Again, what we're kind of seeing in other industries, as far as personal services, not having, 3 people in a waiting room type of thing, so that there's only going to be one client in a waiting room. There's, nobody's kind of passing each other in hallways. There's definitely some really big financial implications for this, but what we're talking about is, what is the client care process while they're in your spa. So new booking policies as far as staggering appointments. So that just means that you're not going to have as much time to sell. Okay. One of the articles that was shared in Spa Business Mastery had an interesting thought, and I agree with this, is having a prepay protocol. Now, when we are open back up for work, I know some of you are worried that, people, they've been laid off and they won't be able to afford services. But I really do think that, okay, we're going to have to stagger getting back to work to begin with. So there's going to be less appointments for sale anyways. But that also means that your time just got extra valuable, and requiring people to prepay for their appointment just holds that spot, so that you're not having to deal with people no showing to their actual day of the appointment. So I know no-shows and collecting credit cards have been a point of contention in our industry for a really, really long time. Some clients don't want to give you their credit card information, but here is a really good time to flip that around. We're going to have all sorts of businesses are going to have new policies and protocols, and this is a great time to implement a prepay. And I don't think most people would actually balk at that, because it's understandable, right? The ones that balk at it, I would say that they might be the ones that would be tending to forget about their appointments and not show up for them anyways. Okay, so the other piece about client care, I spoke about a little bit about when I was talking about client safety, is that having having new spa flow procedures as far as, especially if you have a team, like making sure people aren't kind of meeting each other in the waiting room or at the washroom, that kind of thing. So you'll need to kind of figure out, as you get more information kind of from our governments and from our health authorities, this will become a little bit more clear for us. Right now it's a little bit muddy, but I wanted to make sure that you are thinking about it. Like, how will the spa flow? How many people can we handle at a time in our facility safely? What else can I say? Okay, let's move on to cash flow. What we need to think about as we prepare to open, even though we know we don't have an open date quite yet. So cash flow is the money coming in and the money coming out. Okay, the actual cash flowing in and out of your business. Now, when it comes to preparing for a reopen, there's some big changes that have happened. So not only are we going to have to throttle the amount of guests that we can have in the business, but all of a sudden the cash flow has been changed. So you knew how the cash was flowing into your business pre-closure. We definitely know there's not a lot of cash flowing during closure, but afterwards it's going to be a little bit weird. And so I like to suggest that you do a little bit of cash flow forecasting for the next 4 to 6 months so that you have an idea of how much this could possibly, as far as what are my expenses going to be for the next 3 to 4 months, 6 months. Now, what I would suggest doing with this is actually creating a couple of scenarios as far as team members. So you'll want to have a plan for how you're staggering back your team members. You're not going to be able to bring on a full team right away. So who comes back first? You, depending on how much flow there is and how much you can handle, maybe 1 or 2 service providers, but probably not your whole team. So what you want to do for your cash flow forecasting is figure out these little scenarios. Okay, if I'm going to start up the first couple of weeks with just reception, myself, and 1 team member, okay, what's that financial scenario for labor costs? All right, so that's month 1, and then hopefully month 2, I can bring back another service provider, or maybe 2. Okay, what's that scenario for month 2? So it's really just playing with numbers because we don't know. But here's the thing. It's way less stressful once you kind of have an idea of what to expect rather than just going, oh my gosh, I don't know. Oh, this is going to be tight. You have that constant state of anxiety because you just don't know. Even when you make these scenarios in cash flow forecasting is just your best guess based on all the data that you've got. So it can definitely change, but it just gives you a better idea about what to expect, what's coming down the pipeline when you do end up opening. So with your cash flow, you want to have a couple of different month scenarios of payroll, what that's going to look like. You'll also want to take into consideration extra expenses. So all of those disposables, if we're going to be wearing face shields and gloves, masks, gloves a lot of times we were using before on a regular basis, but not necessarily face masks. What are those extra costs? Are you going to be using disposable bedding? All right. Let's see, what else have I got here? Just one little piece extra about the team, about team payroll is factoring in your team training. All right, so don't forget to add that in, just so that you have an idea of kind of what those costs will be. So it's still a bit of a crapshoot, but I wanted to give you some steps that you could get started working on, because a lot of times when we can at least do something, it makes us feel like we're being productive, which I feel is important for us. And B, it gives us a chance to start preparing. We may not need full gowns and face shields, who knows? But at least you will come to that point in time when it's time to open much more prepared than if you were just kind of like, oh, I'm not sure, I'll just deal with it when we know we get to come back open. So it's up to you how you want to approach this, but I always feel better when I have a plan. That's the control freakish side of me that I know needs soothing, and having a plan helps to soothe that anxiety that the lack of control is contributing to. So I'm really curious if anybody's actually gotten started on their own kind of back to work plan. Were there any surprises in there, or are there more questions? Probably more questions, because of course there's not a lot of concrete answers quite yet. So, I mean, we can look at China. We can look at Italy, although as far as kind of what the beauty industry has done and how they're recovering, and I think that Italy, it's still too soon to get a pulse on kind of any kind of bounce back from that yet. So we're kind of creating it as it goes. We're watching what other personal services industries are doing to get an idea of what will happen for this. And I know that there are working groups in our spa industry that are coming together to help support the salon and spa industry as a whole in terms of like what's actually going to be needed. So that stuff is coming, but I wanted to talk and just kind of start a little bit of prep, see what you can get done. Thanks for joining me, everyone. I really appreciate, I love seeing you guys here, catching it live. I know that since you've been off and not in your treatment rooms, I see way more of you coming on and coming on live and not watching the replay. So it's great to see you. And if you have any questions, any concerns, if you wanted to share how you're feeling, I've gotten some lovely emails back this past couple of weeks, and just from people on my email list. Like every week I send out a link so that you can watch the replay or go on the blog and read it as a blog. And I love hearing from you guys. I love hearing your feedback about how you're handling, dealing with your closures. It's not all going to be pretty, and that's okay. But we're a committed bunch of people. We are a very passionate group of people about caring about other people. So I know we're going to bounce back from this. We're a resilient group, so we'll make it. It's just needing a little support along the way. All right, that's it for me for Thursday Spa Business Break. If you have any questions or any topics that you want me to touch on in upcoming lives, feel free to pop them in the chat or send me a DM, and I'd be happy to see what those look like. See you next week. Bye.